Look, the season may have come to an end for the Memphis Grizzlies, but guess what? There are still some things that are important for the future of this team taking place this week. It's NBA awards release week. We've already seen all the individual awards come out, but you got the all defensive team, all NBA team, all rookie team, all being revealed this week. And the most important of all those may be if Ja Morant will make all NBA. We're going to talk about all of it coming up right here, right now on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. Start of a new week here. I am your host for today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. I want to thank all of you for tuning in again to Locked On Grizzlies for another week here. Make sure you continue to tune in, and we're everywhere, just like the air. That means you can find us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you go to listen or watch your podcast. Locked On Grizzlies is there, so we want to appreciate you and thank you for tuning in on today, because on today we have a lot to talk about. Like I said in the intro here, the season may be over on the court for the Grizzlies, but there are so many more important things that have to happen off the court around this team. And we're going to be here to talk about that, especially with this week being the release of some of the more important the more important individual awards, with the all NBA teams being released, the defensive team, the all rookie teams. The Grizzlies sort of have candidates in each of those areas. And I'll also reveal who I picked from the Grizzlies or didn't pick from the Grizzlies to qualify in each of those scenarios, because I did have a vote this year in the NBA's ballot. So I'll reveal that as well. But before we get into all that, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match of up to $100 with the promo code LOCKED ON. That's prizepicks.com. And all you have to do is use the promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, ON, ON. Well, Ja Morant is where we got to start here, right? It's the elephant in the room. We'll discuss, the all defensive team situation in possibly the next segment, and we know the case with Jaren Jackson Jr. there. He's going to make all defensive first team. You saw how he ran away with the Defensive Player of the Year award. So that's pretty much a given. So we'll talk about that later. We'll save that down the road. But what we got to talk about first is Ja Morant in the case for all NBA. I'm sure this is something you've heard about all season long. You probably heard me talk about it. You heard others talk about it. And I'm going to get into it a little bit. Why this is such a big deal. Why this is important as it's become, the conversation. And just what it means in totality for the Grizzlies, for Ja Morant, financially and everything else. So first thing I want to talk about is the financial factor here with Ja Morant. Right now, he signed a 5-year contract last offseason that'll start off at 25% of the cap. It's called the rookie scale maximum contract extension. 25% of the cap. That number hovers a little bit over 190 million, 192 million, 194 million, somewhere in that range. That's where he is projected to be right now. Well, if Ja Morant makes all NBA, first team, second team, third team, does not matter. Just has to make an all NBA. He gets a kicker in that contract that allows him to now be a supermax player, which means he would qualify to take up 30% of the salary cap, of the Grizzlies salary cap, instead of 25%. 25% is, for a maximum player on a rookie scale extension. You get the supermax guys, the contract we've seen someone like Luka sign. Now you're talking about 30% of the Grizzlies cap room. That'll take Ja Morant upwards of $230 million. Potentially 231 million, somewhere in that range. So all NBA for him, we're talking more than $30 million. I've seen some people say 36, 37, $38 million on the line over a 5-year stretch here. So we're talking maybe $7, $8 million a year, somewhere in between there for Ja Morant, simply based on whether he makes All NBA or not. So let's get into it. Let's get into the case for Ja Morant, All NBA. I'll also reveal a little bit later here what I voted as well. But the first thing I want to point out is we didn't hear this conversation a lot this year about how the record thing with and without Ja pretty much flipped this season. The Grizzlies this season were 40-21 when Ja Morant played. 40-21. When Ja Morant didn't play this season, the Grizzlies were 11-10 in the regular season. And I know they won the playoff game, game 2, without Ja Morant against the Lakers and whatnot. But basically, what I felt like we saw this season is that number kind of reverted to the mean a little bit. Ja Morant is a really great player, and last season the Grizzlies were great in their role, and they had more depth. I think more quality depth. You had guys like DeAnthony Melton, and you had Kyle Anderson, for example, coming off the bench. Whereas this season, when Tyus Jones stepped into the starting lineup, there were a lot of rookies and second-year players on that second unit who were basically being pushed to get the job done. So a little bit of different situation just from a team building and all-around perspective. But you got to point that out. You got to be fair. Last season, everyone was pointing out, the Grizzlies without Ja Morant are 16-2, 17-2 at one point with Tyus Jones running the show. But guess what? This season, it flipped. 40-21 when Ja Morant played on the floor. Some things that stood out to me, just watching Ja this year, and we're talking about his case for this award, is Ja had a year as a playmaker. I think he averaged over 8.1 assists per game overall, 26 points per game. And then another thing that I'm an advocate for, and I watch really closely, is minutes played as compared to production. I'll give you an example. Ja Morant, 26 points per game, and Donovan Mitchell, 28 points per game. But Donovan Mitchell averaged about 4 minutes played per game. Ja was at 31.9 minutes. Donovan Mitchell was at 35.8. Almost 4 more minutes played per game than Ja Morant. So 4 minutes, 2 more points. You do the math there. You can figure that one out for yourself. But basically, you got to factor that in. Some coaches don't, run their guys out there 38 minutes a night. And that's Taylor Jenkins. That's Mike Budenholzer when he was the coach of the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's something I also factored in as well. And at the end of the day, when you talk about the guard position, because now we got to get down into the voting, and then I'll get into my decision process as well. But here's the thing about guards. The NBA is a guard-driven league now. I know we got some old school people here tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies, and you remember back in the day, as the people say, back in the day, the game was inside out. You weren't going to have a successful offensive possession, and you could have, but coaches weren't going to be happy with you if the ball didn't touch the paint first. The ball had to go into the big man. And the NBA's game reflected that. It reflected it when you had David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaquille O'Neal, and then the power forwards, who basically came in right behind those guys, the Tim Duncans, Dirk Nowitzki's, Kevin Garnett, Chris Webber. The list goes on and on and on. But the game was sort of predicated around getting the ball in and then coming out, inside out. Then we saw these guys like Kobe Bryant. Then we saw the Tracy McGrady's, right? Then it went to another level with this guy, Steph Curry. And now the point guard position and the shooting guard position are pretty much interchangeable. That's where we are now. And I say all of that just to say, when we talk about voting for these positions, it was really tough for me because the guards are loaded as loaded as ever. We have never seen this many guards playing at this high of a level. And just to put it in perspective for you, some of the names that probably have no shot at making all NBA this season that I saw on the list were guys like Kyrie Irving, who, amid everything around him this season on and off the floor, was pretty efficient and terrific when he played with the Nets and the Mavs. Like, you look at his numbers, you can compare them to some previous All NBA seasons, and you'd be surprised. He was really good. James Harden, one of the best passers, playmakers in the game from this past season, has kind of rejuvenated his game. Becoming this guy who can give you 40 any night, but also can give you 10, 15 assists. But he's not going to make All NBA. And we're watching him in the playoffs right now. I know he's had two terrible games mixed in between, but he's had two games over 40 points in this playoff series against a real talented Celtics defense. And this is a guy we're talking about has pretty much no shot of making All NBA. So at the end of the day, the competition for Ja is really tough. It's tough. It's hard. But I will say that I voted Ja a third team on my ballot. And basically, the main reasons were some of the things that I mentioned earlier. When he was on the floor, he was terrific. Over 8 assists a game, still around 3 assists. You want the three-point shooting to improve there, but at 40-21 record, he was a big reason why the Grizzlies were as good as they were. And I voted Ja third team. So I don't know how much bearing that'll have on in totality, because I've talked to some other voters who actually didn't have Ja Morant on their ballots. But just to give you more indication on the guards, because you say, okay, well, what other guards did you have on your ballot? First team, I put Steph Curry, Luka Doncic. Second team, I had Damian Lillard, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then third team, I had Ja, De'Aaron Fox. I know Donovan Mitchell is a popular name that's missing, and it's tough. I didn't want to leave Donovan Mitchell off. I completely think he deserves it. And quite frankly, I still think he'll make it. But my thing is, when I do these voting competitions, when I do the voting for All NBA, I can't blame players for the situations that they're in. I can't blame players for the mistakes that their GMs make, for the mistakes that their coaches make in certain retrospect. So what that means is, with Luka Doncic, I mean, he was clearly incredible this season. Can't blame him for the Mavs, not building a quality team around him. Damian Lillard, second team. Some people aren't going to have Damian Lillard on their ballots because he played on a bad Portland team. Well, guess what? Damian Lillard has been All NBA several times before, and you go look at the numbers from this season, much more efficient, with everyone knowing he's the top option, and he kept that team afloat for a long period of time before they fell off towards the tail end of the season there. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander speaks for itself. De'Aaron Fox speaks for itself, what he did for that Sacramento team. That was pretty much my ballot. I think it makes a lot of sense. I would love to hear what some of you guys say. So if you're on YouTube or however else, you can see my Twitter handle is right below here as well at Damichael C. Let me know what you guys think as well. So that's my All NBA ballot from the guards perspective. And I know some people are wondering if I had Jaren Jackson Jr. on there. I did not have Jaren All NBA, but guess what? I had him first team All Defense, and we're going to talk about that coming up after the break. The All Defensive team, because Jaren is not the only Grizzly who should be factored into this conversation. Let's talk about that coming up after the break. But before we talk about that, I got to talk to you about Prize Picks. So here's the thing about Prize Picks. I told you, look, 100% deposit match of up to $100. Like, you can't beat that anywhere. We're basically giving you a free $100. If you deposit $100 first time users, and guess what? You get that $100 right back with Prize Picks. That's the thing about it. And what people say, well, how does Prize Pick work? Well, it's pick 2 to 6 players. You can do it in the NBA right now while the playoffs are going on. Pick 2 to 6 players. All you have to do is say, hey, how about Devin Booker lately? I mean, you can say, hey, I think he's going to score over 30 points. I think Kevin Durant's going to score over 30 points. I think Jokic is going to get more than 10 assists. I think Jamal Murray is going to get over 4 3-pointers made. And you just package all that together. Guess what? If players score more or less, they get more assists or less, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Here's the thing you got to remember as well. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus those said projections. And guess what? I said NBA, because that's what we're talking about here. This is Locked On Grizzlies. But Prize Picks offers you much more. And it's not just NBA. There's other sports as well. If you want to do soccer, if you want to do WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, the list goes on. Prize Picks has you covered. And remember, all you got to do is download the Prize Picks app, go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. If you deposit $100, the Prize Picks will give you $100 of an instant deposit match. If you deposit $50, guess what? Prize Picks will do the same thing, give you a $50 deposit match. So make sure you take advantage of that terrific opportunity over at Prize Picks. Coming up now, we're going to talk about the all defensive team. That award will be interesting. And guess what? I think a couple Grizzlies got real good shots at making it. Let's talk about that coming up after the break. Jaren Jackson Jr. is a given. I'm not going to belinger you guys on with that point too much more. Jaren Jackson Jr. made the first team all defense last season, and he's going to make it again this season. Congratulations to him as well, as he won the Defensive Player of the Year award. I remember talking to him in the locker room, and basically he would say, hey, it would mean something to him to win that award. And I felt bad for him in a way because he kept getting asked about it so much. Everywhere we went, it was, what would it mean to you to win the Defensive Player of the Year award? But he handled it pretty well. So now the Grizzlies have their second Defensive Player of the Year winner of all time. But the difference is, I know there was a little more controversy when Marc Gasol won his and how the whole all defensive team thing played out. I don't want to have to go through that. But what I want to talk about now is another Grizzly, or I'll give it away. I'll go ahead and give it away. Another Grizzly, but he's a quote-unquote former Grizzly at this point in time. Dillon Brooks. Watching him this close this season, I tell you what, I voted Dillon Brooks second team all defense, and I think he had a really good, solid case. Advanced numbers favored him well on the defensive end. He took on the toughest assignments. He held guys well below their season numbers when I did my research. And the eye test tells me a lot too. When we're talking about defense, it's one of the toughest things to judge. So the eye test told me a lot in the case of that is Dillon Brooks. And from the eye test, what I learned is we saw this guy when the Grizzlies had no answer for Lauri Markkanen. Dillon Brooks said, I want him. When the league had no answer for Zion Williamson, Dillon Brooks said, yeah, I'm 6'6", 6'7", and he's 280 pounds, but I want that matchup. I remember we were talking about how D'Angelo Russell was saying that Zion Williamson was playing football out there, and I was talking to Dillon about that, and he said, it's okay, I play football too. So the physicality, all those things are what you're probably going to miss about Dillon Brooks if he's not coming back with the Grizzlies, as reports are indicating. So with that being said, I think he has a really good shot at making second team. I'll go through some of the lists here of the other guys that I put on my all defensive team. And this was tough. Jaren Jackson Jr. first team. But on the first team, I had Alex Caruso and Drew Holiday as the guards, Brook Lopez at center, Jaren Evan Mobley as my two forwards. On the second team, all defense, I had OG Anunoby, who some people want to say future Memphis Grizzly. OG Anunoby, should I go there? No, I'm just talking. I know my partner, Joe Mullinax, would be enthused with that idea. But the other second team guys I had on there, Jake McDaniels played with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Terrific. Loved watching that guy defend. I mean, he's probably the tallest guy to guard Ja Morant this season. I think Jaden McDaniels is very big, 6'9", 6'10", 6'11". And he was matched up against Ja Morant and kind of held his own, just super tall, lanky dude. He takes on the toughest matchup for that Timberwolves team, a game that stood out to me later in the season when no one had an answer for Kevin Durant early in his tenure with the Suns. It was Jaden McDaniels who gave him a lot of trouble in that game in March. But Draymond Green, I put as my second team center, quite frankly, because none of the other centers played as well defensively as Draymond Green, in my opinion. And I wanted to field Jaden McDaniels and OG Anunoby with the two forward spots. But my two guards were Derek White and none other than Dillon Brooks. Yeah, I know Marcus Smart is the guard who won Defensive Player of the Year last season. He's going to get a lot of love. But I said, hey, Derek White, if you just watch the Celtics play, Derek White was more impressive overall defensively this season. But not just that. We're locked up Grizzlies. So we're going to talk about Dillon Brooks. And I know there's been some conversation about what his free agency market would look like and all of that. If he makes all defense, I tell you what, I don't think I've ever really just seen a player make all defense then not get signed that next season. I think Dillon Brooks could be very valuable to a bunch of teams. And he could be very valuable to the Memphis Grizzlies. It's something that I've stood on. I said it a couple episodes ago. If you watch the episode where we discussed, me and Joe Monax discussed the good and bad to deciding to keep Dillon or deciding to just cut ties with him. It seems like the Grizzlies will cut ties with him, but I tell you what, there's going to be a defensive hole open on the wing that is mandatory to get filled. And when I say mandatory, you better not say, hey, we're depending on one of these young guys to step in that spot that Dillon Brooks filled defensively. I think the Grizzlies learned their lesson, as Zach Kleiman kind of alluded to in a way when he brought up a question in the exit interviews about tripling down on youth. I don't think they should quadruple down this offseason, especially losing Dillon Brooks after 6 years, longest tenured Grizzlies player. He guarded everyone. I mean, look no further than his matchups against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this season. If you want to go see the best Dillon Brooks, because some people say, hey, what are your best Dillon Brooks defensive performances this season? I say the 2 games against Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans. I think one was around New Year's Eve, around that time. And then against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think one of those games was maybe in November and the other was early December. And both times he defended him really well as anyone I've seen guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander this season. So basically, yeah, I didn't talk too much about Jaren Jackson Jr. We'll talk more about him over the course of the offseason, what he needs to do to continue to improve defensively. But the point is, we're talking about the all-defensive team, all NBA team. And now, look, it's a long shot. But we're going to talk about all-rookie team because guess what? The Grizzlies made us. They drafted 4 rookies. So I feel like we got to talk about it. So we're going to talk about that coming up after the break on Locked On Grizzlies. David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, Kennedy Chandler, Vince Williams. The Grizzlies drafted 4 rookies after going 56-26, finishing with the number 2 seed, going to the second round of the playoffs last season. In addition to those 4 guys, they also signed undrafted free agent Kenneth Lofton Jr., who ended up being the G League Rookie of the Year this season with the Memphis Hustle. So if you would have told me before the season, hey, the Grizzlies are going to draft 4 rookies, man, and there's going to be playing time available because Zion Williams is going to deal with injuries. He's going to struggle. If you told me Zion Williams would struggle and the Grizzlies would draft 4 rookies, particularly David Roddy and Jake LaRavia, 2 guys who could factor into the wing conversation, I would say, hey, there's a decent chance that someone on the Grizzlies could make an all-rookie team this season. Well, all-rookie team, by the way, is going to be the first one of these awards announced. I apologize for actually saying this late into the show, but Monday will be the all-rookie team will be announced on TNT. I think Tuesday is when the all-defensive team will be announced. It'll be Tuesday afternoon at around 1 p.m. And then Wednesday, it's when the all-NBA team will be announced. So a lot of people in Memphis are going to be real happy or really looking for some answers there. But that's kind of the layout over the next 3 days for how those teams will be announced. So getting back to the whole all-rookie team thing. Again, I'm very big on circumstance. Circumstance is important to me, but it can't be the only reason you say this guy deserves this or this guy doesn't deserve this, because circumstances are not what players can control. I have to remind myself that from a league perspective, that's what the GM's for. That's what the coaches for. They can't say how many minutes a guy's supposed to play. Now that I've said all that, let's get into the case for David Roddy. because he's the only guy on the Grizzlies who has a case. And at this point, it'll just be interesting to see if David Roddy gets some votes. I won't belabor the point here, and I'll just go out and say I did not vote David Roddy all on the all rookie team, but I'm going to tell you some conversations that I had with some people who I may not have put him on their all rookie teams, but this was their case pretty much. And the case for David Roddy that I was hearing a lot was the fact that David Roddy played winning basketball. So what's winning basketball? He played on a team that was one of the top 5 defenses in the NBA. He played on a team that, again, as I said earlier, won over 50 games for the second consecutive season. But not only that, if you look at matchup difficulties among the rookie wing players, I remember the game where David Roddy got thrown into the fire when the Grizzlies played the Nets. Taylor Jenkins said, "Go guard him." You remember when in the playoffs, Dillon Brooks gets ejected for hitting LeBron James in the groin area after the dribble crossover situation happened? Who did Taylor Jenkins go get off the bench? It wasn't Luke Kennard. It wasn't Zaire Williams. He didn't go small ball and go get Tyus either. He turned to the rookie, David Roddy, said, "Hey, go guard LeBron James. Welcome to the game." But from what I just noticed about David Roddy this year, defensively is where he's ahead of the curve right now. Offensively, he wasn't bad. Still shot over 42%, which is solid numbers for a rookie, especially if you look at the type of shots that David Roddy really took. It was a lot of spot-up three-pointers. I think he finished the season around 30% from three-point range, but a lot of spot-up three-pointers and things like that where it kind of hurt his shooting percentages. But we'll see, kind of where he goes from this point. But I kind of had a fun joking stat. So hopefully none of you take this too serious. Just want to throw a fun fact out to you as I was preparing for this show, and I learned. Did you know that David Roddy is the second highest scoring rookie in this year's postseason? Second highest scoring rookie in this year's postseason. Keegan Murray of the Sacramento Kings averaged over 9 points per game. David Roddy with a measly 3.8 points per game is the second highest scoring rookie in the playoff. So again, that goes back to my point. Simply saying the rookies who had the best individual seasons were nowhere near the playoffs. And again, circumstance, just how we're talking about circumstantially for David Roddy, he was put in a situation where he went to a team that played 50-win basketball before he got there. But in his defense, you can kind of say, well, David Roddy didn't just get thrown in the game and say, hey, go guard that spot-up shooter that's not going to move around that much. David Roddy got thrown into the game to guard Zion Williamson when Dillon Brooks was in foul trouble, or LeBron James, or Kevin Durant. And I've seen him take on a lot of these matchups and kind of embrace it. I've talked in the past on Locked On Grizzlies about how Dillon Brooks kind of took David Roddy under his wing this past season. That was something that was important to Dillon Brooks, just kind of mentoring, David Roddy over the course of this season and just being there with him throughout this process as he learned, how to play defense at the NBA level and what exactly does that look like. So the 10 players that I voted for all rookie first team, Paolo Banchero, I had Jalen Williams for Oklahoma City Thunder, dynamic 4/guard over there. Benedict Mathurin, Walker Kessler, Keegan Murray were all in my first team. Second team, Jaden Ivey, Jeremy Sochan, Jabari Smith, Jalen Duren, Shaedon Sharpe got the last spot there for me. I think Shaedon Sharpe really turned it on. Again, circumstance matters. When Damian Lillard got hurt, Anthony Simons got hurt, the Trailblazers basically threw Shaedon Sharpe into the fire and said, we're going to start this guy, and you're going to play a bunch of minutes. And he responded well. Had some really nice games down the stretch for that Trailblazers team. But of the 4 rookies, David Roddy, of the 4 Grizzlies rookies, David Roddy had the best season overall, and that's why he's the one guy who may get votes. Before the season, I would have said, hey, I think it's going to be Jake Laravia because of his shooting, because of, it's just him being an older player, a more mature player at that point of his career. And I thought it would be him. Physically, he brings a lot to the table as well. But David Roddy was that guy. And there it is, everyone. That's how we feel right now on the NBA awards. So we'll talk a little bit more about this on tomorrow when all rookie teams reveal. It'll be interesting to see if David Roddy gets any type of love. So we'll see, how that goes. Well, thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen each and every day. And speaking of every day, I need all my everydayers out there, Locked On Grizzlies people that tune in. Tomorrow on the show, we're going to talk about a lot more. Me and Joe Mullinax should both be with you. We got a lot of Grizzlies things to cover this week. Again, stay tuned with us all week long because we got the all rookie teams going to be revealed. We'll break that down. We're going to break down when the all defensive teams revealed. Man, look, if Dylan doesn't make it, I kind of think he got snubbed. But we'll see how it works out. We'll see how that goes. And quite frankly, Jaren Jackson Jr. should be in unanimous first team. So be interesting to see if anyone's brave enough to leave him off of first team as well. But that's all, neither here nor there. We've talked about it enough on this episode. We're going to talk about it more going through the week. We're going to talk about much more around this Grizzlies team as well. So make sure you continue to like, comment, subscribe to all of our content. We appreciate you here at Locked On Grizzlies. Same time tomorrow. We'll see you again. So stay tuned for Locked On Grizzlies.